the society in which we live is one which is under tremendous amount of control. Some control is necessary. What do I mean? You have to have rules and regulations. We have to have laws. We have to have laws governing how we're going to operate during a time of crisis. We're also going to have guidelines as to how do we act in a very safe way during a time of crisis. And we are now in a time of crisis. Problem comes in is how far do we go? See? That's the problem. How far do we go? Or how far do we let the authorities go in restricting our freedoms? These freedoms come to us in two ways, but basically they come in a bundle, all right? And it's the Constitution, but most especially the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment. Okay, speech, assembly, religion, press, free speech. Whenever there is a time of crisis, it seems as if the people in charge want to aggregate to themselves more and more power. And sometimes that grabbing for power can exceed itself, and it can violate our freedoms and our rights. The freedoms, our freedom naturally comes to us from God. I remember very clearly, Thomas Jefferson said, the God who created us gave us freedom at the same time. And you're going to find those thoughts in the Declaration of Independence and in the Constitution. They're embedded in there. So how much are we willing to cede our freedoms to those who are seemingly in control of our present situation? This is something we have to be very, very careful about, because we do have natural rights and we do have civil rights. Natural rights just our right to go out and to take a walk. To take a walk on the beach, to take a walk out in the park. These things are important. They're important for us physically, mentally, and spiritually. We've talked about this before. But also when we look at the Constitution, we have something called the general welfare and the blessings of freedom. General welfare means what? It means we have the right to take care of ourselves and to take care of our families. It's almost, it's a right to work. It's a right to have our businesses reopened. Or else what happens? We could lose our businesses. We have more and more people now unemployed. And so we have to look very carefully as to what is considered essential, what is a non-essential business, and then who determines what's essential and who determines what's not essential. We also have to look very carefully at not only our business situation, but we have to look more deeply at our religious situation. We're engaging in that now. This is a religious event. But religion also talks about recognizing the freedom of God's children and the freedom to worship. This is extremely important. Why? Because, and I'm hoping very shortly, there will be relaxation in our worship services, that following proper guidelines and not being stupid and doing things that could hurt other people, that we follow proper protocols to keep people safe. This past week, I've been reading the newspapers that we're going to be having a reopening of Collier County Committee, which is a nice idea. But, committees, they take a long time to assemble, and you have to be careful who's on the committee. And in my reading, there's no representation from the clergy. Extremely important to have clergy representation. Why? Our churches, all of our churches, we provide service to our people. Not just spiritual service, but other services that take care of their material needs too. And so, why are clergy not represented? And when the churches do reopen, we want to make sure that the guidelines that we are given are guidelines that we can live by and enforce in a worship service. So if you are so inclined, I'm going to ask you to get in touch with our county commissioners and insist that clergy be represented, because clergy and churches are vital to a healthy community. And as you know, our community is a community that's filled with wonderful churches, Catholic, Protestant, Orthodox, synagogues. We have to make sure that if this is going to be done right in the context of our constitutional rights, that clergy are represented. Second area is this that I have to caution you about. There is a growing national debt. I am now told that it's nearing $25 trillion. I can barely comprehend anything over $1,000, but when you're talking about trillions of dollars, it's completely beyond me and beyond most people. Now, what are some of the concerns with that? And again, they have to do with our freedom, because as we build up debt, we are straddling future generations with our excess. So future generations, our children, your children and grandchildren, are going to have to pay the interest on the debt that we are building right now, where we're trying to respond to a crisis, but could there be a bigger crisis down the road? And then the debt is bought up by foreign countries. 30% belongs to China, if not more, in shell corporations. And wealthy people can also buy up debt. And they then, like that, they can get control of our American society. So the debt is extremely important. Most of us don't get it, but it's something that we should get, because it could cause inflation and it could cause tremendous damage to our freedoms that are guaranteed to us in the Constitution, because we no longer own ourselves. Over these months now, there's been a tremendous amount of money, payroll protection, all kinds of other benefits coming from the federal government. This is virtual money. They're just printing it off. Sooner or later, there's going to be a problem. And I want you folks to pay attention to it, because once again, it affects our freedom. It affects the freedom of our children and our grandchildren and generations to come, that they might not know the America that we know today. Lastly, regarding our freedoms, there is a state, I believe it's New Hampshire, that has a motto, live free or die. Keep that motto in mind. But let me tell you how great nations lose their freedom. Let me just refer to the Roman Empire. Basically, people give up their freedoms when they're scared. It's what happened in the Roman Empire. The barbarians were beginning to invade. The state gave over to authority to a dictator, the Caesars, Caesar Augustus. And they had the great Roman peace. They had the great Roman peace because, well, why? Because the people basically had no freedom, and the state took over, and the army ruled, and they supported the emperor. So a lot of us are scared. A lot of us are saying maybe we should give up our God-given freedoms in order to be safe. It's not a good idea. It reduces us to a less than human state, and it denies all of the principles that are given to us in Scripture and given to us in the Constitution, given to us in the Bill of Rights. So remember the motto of New Hampshire: live free or die. And if we don't live free, this country will die. God love you.